story of Saikira Takakura begins in 1968th year. His mother died during childbirth, and his father joined her when the guy was 17. It was then that he found the cat, which he named Pete. Both were taken in by their father's friend, a scientist, who gave his life to the development of robotics. His daughter Riko loved the boy and the cat from the bottom of her heart. In the following years, the guy studied hard and studied a lot under the guidance of a scientist. But his adoptive parents died in an airplane accident. Riko was taken away by his uncle, the co-owner of the corporation, and Satyr was left by Pete alone in the house. 1995th year has come. One day, when the Satyr was working on his robot, there was a story in the news about his development, which he led under the direction of Uncle Rico's corporation. The journalist says that the robot that everyone is waiting for is about to appear. He will be able to study by himself and do most of the work. Soitira is amazed to see her photo on the screen when the phone rings. This is the head of a corporation, who is sure that it is high time for the world to know about his work. The footage changes to weather reports, and Pete rushes to the door. Saitira has long noticed that when the weather worsens, the cat demands to open all the doors in the house, as if looking for the one that will lead him into the summer. So this time the guy opens the front door, behind which stands a grown-up Riko. The girl sits down on the sofa and reads a book about robotics, while Saitira is working. During the break, the guy listens to the song in her headphones and laughs. She listens to this song all the time, and then he wonders if Riko is interested in reading his books, to which the girl replies that she is interested in everything related to him. Only a week later, she leaves for a new school. Saitira shows his new project, a plasma battery, which Riko's father began to develop, and this will be a breakthrough in the field of energy. You don't have to recharge the batteries anymore. A future where humans and robots will coexist is just around the corner. At this moment, Saitira's fiancé arrives, who works as an accountant in the corporation, and neither Pete nor Riko likes her. The lady behaves like a hostess, not paying attention to the girl's discontent. Riko leaves, and the bride begins to cook dinner and pays attention to the signed shelves and doors. Riko tried to make the absent-minded scientist comfortable. After lunch, the bride shows the prepared documents for the sale of part of the corporation's shares to her and assures that she does not need them at all. But the head decided so, and Saitira, as a co-owner of the company, to whom the share of Riko's father was bequeathed, must sign the contract. The guy has nothing against it, and when the girl kisses him, unconditionally signs the papers. A few days later, Saitira comes to the head, and he informs that he intends to put his robot up for sale. The guy is stunned because he is unfinished. He is categorically against it, but the businessman is determined to sell the first sample in the Mannix company. The bride, as a member of the board, offers to vote. The guy happily takes a breath. The girl will clearly support him, but the woman gives the decisive vote to the leader. Under the new contract, Satyr is even deprived of the right to continue working, and the equipment belonging to the company is withdrawn from him. And although he remains a shareholder, he has nothing to do with the company anymore. The shocked Satyr jumps out of the office and rushes home, but finds a ruined office, from where everything concerning his robot has been taken out. Riko finds a frustrated Satyr drinking alcohol. How could he trust these people? He has lost everything that is dear to him. Riko reminds he will never lose her, but Satyr treated her like a child. The girl urges not to give up, but the guy is completely crushed by betrayal, and suddenly he catches sight of an advertisement for cryosleep. Technology has reached the point that the duration of cold sleep reaches 30 years, and Satyr, along with Pete, decides to get away from problems. But during a medical examination, doctors find traces of alcohol in his blood and advise him to come tomorrow. At this time, Riko is crying in her place by the ocean, where she ran away when she was sick, while Satyra, sitting in the car, remembers how he wrote a will, according to which his shares will go to Riko. The lawyer then expressed outrage at the actions of his boss and the bride. Riko's favorite song starts playing on the radio, and Pete looks at his friend with disapproval. Satyra remembers how the girl asked him not to give up, and understands that running away is not the solution to the problem. At this time, Riko returns to his uncle's house, hears the voice of the bride, who is outraged by the act of Riko's father, who transferred part of the Satyr share. The uncle reminds them that the guy is their only engineer, and the presence of drawings gives them little, and advises them to ask about the van left at Satyr's house. Riko realizes that the guy is in danger and rushes to the phone, but instead of a friend's voice, he hears an answering machine, and then her uncle finds her, but the girl lies that she hurries to meet her friend and runs away. The uncle realizes that the girl heard everything and rushes in pursuit, and the bride receives a call from Satyr, who goes to her uncle's house. They meet in the living room, and the guy is surprised how well his fiancée knows this house. He's going to tell the public everything. The reputation of the firm will be destroyed, and they will lose everything. The woman pretends to agree to his demands, but gives an injection. The guy falls to the floor, unable to move, and sees how the woman opens his bag, from where Pete jumps out, and, having scratched the villain, runs to the window. The enraged bride tries to catch the animal, but then the sound of glass breaking is heard in the living room, and the woman sees someone driving away in the satyr's car. Was he not alone? At this time, Rico approaches the satyr's house, where she is blinded by the headlights of a car that has arrived, and the bride is rushing around the living room, unable to figure out what to do with the former groom. And then, he sees a folder with the Creason documents signed by him. Satyr wakes up in a Creasona capsule. Only the bride brought him to the Mannix company, where she worked as an accountant, and helped the management very much to avoid paying taxes, so he can be calm. Satyr tries to get up, but the capsule is filled with gas, and he falls asleep. The man comes to his senses and is amazed by the environment around him. He is greeted by a doctor, who looks incredibly similar to the one with whom he communicated during his first visit to Cryoson. It turns out that this is his son, and now it's 2025th year. The guy starts looking for Pete, and a man comes up to his call, who turns out to be an android, and his name is Pete too. Satyr is dumbfounded and does not want to stay in the hospital, despite the robot's insistence. The lawyer called in informs that the Mannix company has gone bankrupt, and now the satyr has nothing, not even a house. He will be paid a small financial support for the first time. In addition, a woman named Rico was interested in him. Hearing this, the satyr snatches a piece of paper with the address from the lawyer's hands, avoids the chamber. He runs outside, marveling at the incredible similarity of robots with people, and then freezes, looking at the city views. There's some money in his wallet, and he's trying to hail a taxi. But Pete, who caught up with him, shows a new way to call a taxi, a mobile application. He literally pushes the guy into the car, calls Rico's address, and when the car starts, reports that apparently he is defective, since he has to develop the function of a researcher. He is glad that he escaped, and throws away the man's wallet. No one accepts such money for a long time. Pete reaches out and picks up the phone, which now replaces everything, but he does not understand how to open a new wallet. They finally arrive in the right area, but Rico's house is in a creepy neighborhood. Everything is filthy and littered, and when the couple enters the apartment, Styra covers her nose from the stench. He calls Rika, but responds. The bride, a plump and downcast woman, furiously pours mud on him. It's all his fault. A year after he went into hibernation, the head of the corporation fell ill and died. Then she was arrested for tax fraud, and Satyr somehow transferred his shares to an unknown man, who ruined all her plans. Satyr demands to say where Rico is, but she, laughing, tells about the explosion in a fire in his house, after which no one saw the girl anymore. The devastated Satyr goes to the cemetery and finds a slab with the name of Rico, over which he cries bitterly, remembering the girl. Pete stands by sympathetically. Later, they sit in the girl's favorite place and listen to her song. Now the guy is going to find out which man the bride was talking about. He suddenly remembers how Rico asked if Pete would be happy if there was an endless summer outside the window, and his answer that then the cat would be looking for the door to winter. The couple goes to the library, and while Satyra studies documents about the company's history and finds a shareholder who literally came out of nowhere, Pete studies comics and learns to laugh, and then informs that it's time for him to enter sleep mode. The interested Satyr finds out how the android works, and he reports on the self-generating constant energy. The guy asks the robot to take off his sweater, and, after examining his insides, realizes that he works on a plasma battery, which is produced by an unknown company, Aladdin. The couple goes to the uncle's former company, but the robot behind the counter does not want to let them through. And then, Pete somehow reboots the girl, after which she takes them to the new president. And he suddenly rushes to meet the satyr, with an expression of stormy delight, but the satyr does not remember him, although he assures that they are familiar. In addition, there is the very first created satyr robot in the office. The president only regrets that the guy granted the rights to the plasma battery to Aladdin. Satyr doesn't understand anything at all. How could he do that if he was in Kresna? The president says that once he came to their family restaurant, wrote him a magazine with the development of the battery, and said that the boy would become an inventor. There he met with Professor Toy, who was later arrested for stealing money from the Foundation to create a time machine. Stunned, Satyr reviews Professor Toy's interview and comes to the conclusion that someone is impersonating him. Meanwhile, the president finds documents from which Satyr learns the name of a strange shareholder, Sato, who later founded Aladdin, and in all the documents of his company, there is the name of the first inventor of robots, Satyr, and the second model was created by Sato Rico. All the inconsistencies flash before the satyr's mind's eye, and he realizes that he needs to go to Professor Tai, and he repeats the gesture of the president, rushes to hug the guy, and then shows his time machine, and tells him to get up on the platform. He's already been waiting. And then, Satyr confesses to Pete that it was he who helped the professor build the car, and in general everything was conceived by him. They are now in an altered future. The professor explains that time moves along an axis. That is, it is closed, but there are no parallel worlds. After that, it is given to go for gold bars, which he must sell in the past, and invest in his research. Pete instructs his friend, and the professor asks him not to linger in the past and come back here at exactly the same time. To do this, the satyr will have to plunge into cryosleep again. Satyr releases Pete from the service, asks to keep his player, and stands on the platform to go to 1995th year. But then the robot sees that the guy is getting sick and rushes to him. They disappear together in the flow of time and appear right in the middle of the road, almost under the wheels of a car. Satyr wakes up at Satu's house, who informs him that he has prepared a room for him and cached his gold. He knows everything because Pete told his story. The dumbfounded guy sees an android communicating with a young woman in a wheelchair, and Satu holds out documents that Satyr has already seen in the future. Everything must be documented. Later, Satyr apologizes to Pete. He will not be able to return to the future with the help of Kreese, but he calms the guy down. He can turn on sleep mode, and the guy sits down to work on the battery, and soon goes to a meeting with Professor Toe. Everything goes as the president said, a family cafe, and a kid with a magazine. Satyr tells the professor about everything, and gives money for the development of a time machine, and then leaves an autograph to the boy. Styra works like an obsessive, and one day confesses to Sato that he gave a name to a robot named after a cat who never gave up, and then he asks the lawyer to check the tax reports of Mannix, and offers to create a new company, which Sato calls, after looking at the poster, Aladdin. Satyr's last request to the lawyer is to take Rico in. There comes a day when a memorable meeting of shareholders took place, and while Satyr is arguing with the traitors, Pete runs to his house to detain the van that took away his developments. He stops the car and, scaring the workers, takes him away, while Satyr from the future finishes her battery, and then goes to her uncle's house, saves Pete, and leaves for the Godfather's company. Later, he drives to his house and blinds Rico with his headlights. He hugs an uncomprehending girl when the van pulls up asleep. Satyr entrusts the girl to a robot, and he goes to his house, finds a power of attorney for the right to dispose of shares, and sets them on fire. Then, looking at the house, and remembering his foster father, he opens the gas cylinders and blows up the house. He takes Rika to Sat's house, talking about the future. The girl is warmly welcomed by the lawyer and his wife. They are happy that they will have a daughter, and Satyr gives Sat's documents and is asked to hand over his first robot to the new owner of the corporation, after which he takes the cat and says goodbye to Rico. He must leave, and the girl will live, because the world does not stop. They will definitely meet in 30 years. The android promises to support Rico, and reminds him that his appearance in the past is not an accident. Everything will affect the course of the case. Satyr runs into cryosleep and wakes up 30 years later in the hall, where he is met by the robot Pete, with the cat Pete in his arms. He sends a letter that says that Rico went to school, went to university, and invented Pete too, and then went into cryosleep. The happy Satyr runs to the capsule, in which Rico wakes up. Now they can be together. A Japanese look at the creation of the master of American fiction, Robert Heinlein, and I must say, Roman was lucky. The film turned out to be quite good, despite the few special effects, but there are a lot of motivating statements in the picture, so don't stop looking for Doors to Summer.